everyone. Kind of a sticky start there. But Never Not Here on a Sunday, May the 9th. Oh boy. So we're with Jeff Foster today, and I'll bring him on in a second. I guess I'll just bring him on now. What the heck? What do I have to say? Hi, Jeff. Welcome.
Hello, Richard. Hello, everybody.
Yeah.
Nice to be back.
Yeah. You know, I'm in a kind of a strange position because of Never Not Here. And in a way, it's kind of a position where I'm looking over everyone's shoulder because, especially on the webcast, a lot of people are calling in and they're asking questions, and I have questions myself. And somehow it seems that so many of us are stuck on certain questions, or so many of the questions are repeated. And what came to me, actually, it's just a story, of course, but what came to me in the story part of my existence is that all these confusions somehow reflect on what's being said, or somehow the teaching is defective, or somehow how come this is happening where everybody thinks that, I don't know, whatever the question is, and there's always one that seems to repeat and recirculate, and I don't even have to say what they are, but everybody knows that there's similar questions. If they don't keep asking them, then somebody else is always asking them. And so then for a while I had this idea that, from some kind of a position of kind of looking at a lot of different teachers and how they point and what they say, maybe there is some kind of a easier way to point that doesn't create as much confusion, and that's another story too. And so then I was building these concepts. Of course, everything is a concept anyhow. I mean, all this, the teaching is a concept. Maybe it's not delivered as a concept, but it's received as a concept. And so then I started faulting teachers too for not seeing how the teaching was received, and just giving it in the best way they could, but somehow not realize. Well, they realize too that people receive it the way they receive it, and then it just goes in a lot of different places where some people just kind of look at one side of life as kind of a mental projection going on, and another side of life is the space in which that projection is happening. And somehow, are they out of balance? Well, at first people just, and me too for sure, just think that mental projection or, ideas are pretty much king, And you either have better ideas or worse ideas. Go ahead.
Well, I was going to say that, I mean, when it's discovered, when you discover for yourself that those two things aren't separate, that awareness and contents of awareness aren't separate, then the questions about who is delivering this message clearly, who is the clearest teacher, all those questions become irrelevant, really. At the end of the day, what does it matter what the teachers are saying? What does it matter what the gurus are saying? What's true here and now? And when you discover what's true here and now, what does it matter? It ceases to matter anymore if anyone is delivering this message, or if it's being delivered clearly by anybody, because that then you go beyond the teachings, you go beyond teachers and teachings, and you just you discover that the truth, and I don't use that word truth a lot. Well, the truth is here and now. It's this, and no one can teach you this.
Right.
It's just life itself. It's life itself. You are the only authority. Not the you of the mind, not the ego, because the ego loves to think it's the only authority. I don't mean it in that way, but the life is the only authority. Life is the teaching. Life is the truth. And then you don't need to. Then what does it matter what Mr. Jones or Mr. Blogs down the road is saying? What does it matter what the teachers say, or what the that question becomes irrelevant when you just discover that life itself is this, right here and right now. And
right.
Then the thing is, you didn't even need to talk about it.
That makes great sense. No, it makes great sense on many levels,
Yeah.
That makes great sense. And then, but still, I mean, kind of like the way you introduced it, when you start to realize what's really true, or what's then you see that doesn't really make any difference. But when you haven't realized it, it kind of makes a difference, because it makes you go around and around. If that makes a difference, maybe that doesn't even make a difference either, And but anyhow, yeah.
Sorry, go on.
Okay. So then, what really comes out of it is things are grasped as concepts or beliefs, And then we're saying, well, we shouldn't have any beliefs. And then, I don't know, kind of a really terrific thing happened to me the other day because, I get to thinking that I'm pretty clear and maybe pretty centered or not so attached by beliefs. And, of course, that's a belief, And so somebody called me up and they tried to their intention was to give me an introduction to a kind of a self-improvement course. And right away, I had so many reactions, I'm way beyond that. And I didn't tell them that, but these things started coming up at me left and right. And then when they asked me simple things like, okay, what are 3 things do you believe about yourself? What are 3 things that you believe about your work, about your relationships? To go through this clearings, let's say. Oh my God! I stumbled so much on this stuff because I was full of Advaita concepts. And I couldn't even go straight, But I did, I hung in there, I didn't try to wrong them or anything like that. And boy, she was really cool as far as giving her energy to me and really, taking me into this thing. And I just realized that, okay, all these beliefs, And one thing they were saying was that we generally have an idea that our experiences create our beliefs, because we just have cognition and we're able to say, oh, wow, look what I learned, and so I'll believe that this is the way the world works. And then the question is maybe the beliefs create your experience, and then you're sort of looping around and around. And which is also kind of like said by Advaita pointings, because when you get to the end of it and say, well, nothing really exists, you're just seeing your beliefs in a way. And so then I kind of realized that I was really full of baggage too. And so then let me just move to another thing and see if I can put this together, because I just kind of had this insight this morning. I started to read, 2 weeks ago I read this book. It was called Cancer's Not a Disease. And it was talking about actually how the body works. I actually posted it under book reviews. I posted kind of a review about Cancer's Not a Disease. And the guy's name is Moritz. And it's just saying that how the cells eat and breathe, and how they what the circulation system is doing, which is also the kind of like the lymphatic and the blood, and how that he related it that all diseases, cancer included, but actually when you got into it, almost all of them were clogs in the circulation system. Somehow the lymphatic system was not able to take away waste materials, and that every kind of disease was really just congestion. See? And so now, okay, I'll just take a jump, not to prolong this too long, but I'll just take a jump.
I want to see where.
Yeah,
where
say a word. You want to see how I can come out of this, huh?
Go on.
Okay, just check it out now. Like, okay, this is how it works. Like, your cells, you take glucose and oxygen, and you make energy. Okay, now, so then I jumped out of that and said, okay, what about your consciousness? It takes concepts, perceptions, which automatically go to concepts, because that's how mind takes perceptions. Perceptions come in the 5 senses and thoughts. Perceptions come and concepts, and they're mixed with their own oxygen. What is that? It's space. So that's what we're saying. We're saying that the form and the formless are always together, so that concepts in space are always together. And these things are in a circulatory system. In a way, there's a it's just like your body. In fact, it's the same. It's a beautiful metaphor, but actually maybe it's just exactly the same. Mm. And these two things are mixed in equal parts or a certain part, but leaning toward one or the other, like when we always have concepts and we don't have any space, then, okay, we get congested. And when we think we only have space, or we try to go to only space and try to cut all the concepts out, then we have congestion too. And what is working? What is actually happening with these two elements, the form and the formless, the concepts and the spaciousness? Understanding comes out of it, and it's like the evolution or the sophistication of consciousness, which is maybe the point. Many people say that's the point of life, of the sophistication of consciousness, and yet all this has to come and flow. If it's congested, just like in the body. Okay, these two things, space and concepts, come out and they congest. How do they congest? It's something about holding on to beliefs. In other words, each one, because like I was talking with this lady, okay, about the Avatar course, and we were talking about the flexibility of beliefs and so on. And the fact, and whether the beliefs came out of the experience or the experience comes out of the belief. So something about what arises in consciousness is a perception and let's call it a belief, which is underpinned by concepts. That comes, and that mixes with space, and understanding comes out of it. But then, in order to circulate, that just has to go. In other words, when we say, I need that belief, let me hold on to that one, because that's how the world works, and I'm going to need that to survive. Then we hang in there, and there's no room, there's congestion, there's no room for the next perception, and the next, it's going to come because it's coming through a mental channel. It's going to come with its own conceptual baggage. We could call it baggage, or it's just how it comes. And out of that is the possibility of, let's just call it understanding which is timeless, not understanding like a mental cognition or calculation or storing of information or knowledge, in the sense knowledge-based means collecting a lot of facts and figures and relationships. Not that. Understanding means timeless, just timeless understanding, like, it just, and the product of it has got to be enlightenment or awakening, and it's just natural. And and this is what came to me. What the relationship or the formula or the recipe of the how much space and how much conceptual perceptions. I don't know it. It just it just flows naturally. It's all the natural thing, and the whole thing, just the whole insight for me just said, okay, well, there's no preference. It's not like I'm trying to get rid of concepts and get more space, or ignore the space and stay on my concepts, because I built a life around these concepts. Oftentimes we say we built a fixed life in a flowing universe, and sooner or later you hit a brick wall with it. And but what I'm saying is, it's almost like when people say that there's a rising and death in every minute, because that's the circulatory system, and every kind of like dis-ease of consciousness, which is like anxieties and fears, they come out of a block in the circulation. It's exactly the same as the body, and probably it also gives you cancer too, because probably the body is a perfect reflection of it. And maybe that's the cure for cancer too, is just to let go of beliefs and let go of fears. And so anyhow, that's what came to me. It was only this morning, so it kind of got off to a rocky start. But I don't know. I think that's really sounds like a miraculous way to point to me. What do you think about that, Jeff?
Wow.
There's really nothing to do. It just fits in so good because there's nothing to do. There's no preference involved. It's just saying, okay, well, what about this mechanism? It's just a story. So it's like, let's just call it a working point story. Any story that relaxes somehow seems to be effective. You can talk about quarks and say, look, we're all space. And to some people that relaxes. To some other people they say, oh God, science is the biggest story of all of them.
So Richard,
tell me.
What if you can't know any of that? I mean, it's a really beautiful story, but what if ultimately we can't know?
I totally agree that we can't know. That we can't know. It's true, but I mean, like, it's a story that doesn't have anything to do. There's nowhere to go, no preference, no. All there is to relax and just allow perceptions to be conceptual, and then allow them to go away. and allow new ones to come in, and then okay, if I say understanding is a product of that, but I mean, there's no way to prove it. I mean, understanding is, if it's timeless, it's not in your memory banks or anything like that. But maybe it hits the rubber hits the road somewhere where, I mean, where you actually do notice your life is smoother and easier. Why not? That should be the point of the whole thing, I suppose. Otherwise, let's get the hell out of here. You can't know. You're right. You're absolutely right. And especially you can't know in your mind. You know. But people say diseases are psychosomatic, or a part of them are. And so let's just let it be that way, that it's the same block of your circulatory system. I highly suggest everyone read Andreas Moritz. Cancer's not a disease, you know.
It sounds like fascinating bedtime reading, I must say.
Yeah.
You know, I think I can only, you know, I used to have so many concepts about what's true and how everything works, and how the body functions, and I came to see that none of them were true. And yet even that was another concept. You're absolutely right. Even the concept that no concept is true is ultimately another concept, and the concept that there is only space is another concept. So it's all conceptual, all of it. So where does that leave you? You know, and I mean, it's really so simple. You know, thought appears. Thought appears. Let's start from the absolute basics, like right here and right now. Thoughts appear, concepts appear. So then immediately thought comes in, or mind, or ego, or person, whatever you want to call it, it doesn't really matter. And thought says, well, to whom do concepts appear? From where do concepts appear? From where does thought appears? And then what might rush in is the answer, or an answer that you've picked up. You know, awareness. So all thoughts arise from awareness, or all thoughts arise from space. And of course, that's just another concept arising. And the thing is, you'll never discover the place from where thoughts arise, because it's not a place. It hasn't got a location, it hasn't got a size, it hasn't got a form, it hasn't got a shape, because all size, location, shape, and form, all duality simply arises. It's simply part of that which is arising. So it's you know, in a sense, it's always the wrong question. From where do thoughts arise? From where do concepts arise? From where do beliefs arise? I mean, if in radical direct experience, all you can really say is thought appears. Thought appears. There appears to be thought. There appears to be belief and concepts. There appears to be the dream. There appears to be the dream of duality, the dream of me, you, up, down, left, right. And years ago, as a spiritual seeker, as a very serious, very intense spiritual seeker, I used to believe that it was my job to get rid of duality, to get rid of separation, to get rid of the stuff that appears, you know, to get rid of form and move into the formless, or to get rid of the stuff that arises in space, or to move away from the stuff that arises in space and move towards the space. Because I used to think, of course, once I moved away from all the stuff that arises in space and reached space, then I would be free, or then I would be enlightened. And of course, that was all just more concepts. It was more thoughts. You know, it was thought that said, move away from all thoughts and move into space. what was finally discovered, of course, as we were saying before, was that actually thoughts are not separate from space. Thoughts are made of space, or consciousness, or awareness, or energy. I mean, there's so many words, and it's an absolute minefield. I mean, it's an absolute minefield. It's if you're trying to understand this stuff, and of course, the only mechanism we have with which to understand is the mind. If you're trying to understand this stuff, it's going to lead to so much confusion and frustration, because basically we're trying to understand something that cannot, by its very nature, be understood, because all understanding appears in this. No understanding, no amount of understanding, no amount of concepts, even the clearest concepts in the world, they can't take you to this. Yes, we can talk and debate, and we can exchange concepts, and in some ways clarify understanding that way, and that's beautiful. That's part of being human. If that wasn't possible, if no conversation was possible, if no exchange of concepts were possible, I mean, what a dull universe it would be. I mean, it's wonderful that we can talk like this and we can exchange concepts, and you can tell me your story and I can tell you my story, and that's beautiful. It's not a case of getting rid of that. It's not a case of getting rid of the story, but just to discover, or should I say rediscover, that I mean, ultimately, that in which thought arises is not separate from thought. I mean, it's the absolute paradox.
But just, when you say to realize that, like when you say to realize that, couldn't we call that an understanding? Like that you realize that there is no separation,
yeah.
And, not understanding in the sense of knowledge, not understanding in the sense of a logical conclusion based on a conversation, but just some understanding that comes as a gift, and timeless gift, that you just say, whoa, there's no separation. I just see it. It's a scene. I don't know how, or what, or I can't tell you what it's like even, but I mean, couldn't we call that understanding, and just say that's nature brings us to that just by itself.
Yeah, but you see, it's not you who understands it. It wasn't Jeff who understood. It's not me who understands, because it's the very me that would understand or not that is seen through. It's the Jeff that could understand or could misunderstand. It's the Jeff that understands, or the Jeff that is confused, that is seeing through. It's Jeff and his understanding, or Jeff and his confusion that is seen through. And then you see it ceases to matter. Ultimately, it ceases to matter whether you understand, because you are this. You are life. You are this. I mean, you can call that understanding. It depends how you use the word understanding. But all I know is that I spent years trying to understand. So it's not the understanding that's the problem. It's the trying.
It's the trying. So in other words, in a way, that's the ultimate understanding, that there's no one there understanding it, right?
The ultimate understanding is that there is nothing to understand.
Yeah.
There's absolutely nothing to understand. And the thing is, how long does that take? When we talk about understanding, what we really mean is time. It takes time to understand. And actually, even the word understand is quite interesting. It means, understand, to stand under. If something stands under you, it's like a, if I can understand something, there's the sense that I kind of have power over it. I dominate it. I'm now the master. So that's the ultimate dream of the ego, is it wants to understand. It wants to understand life, because basically it wants to control life. This is really all about control. It's really all about the individual's attempt to control life, because the individual thinks that they are separate from life. So the individual says, okay, I need to understand life, and once I understand life, then I'll be free, or then I will be enlightened, or whatever the story running is. I mean, but as we said before, the ultimate understanding, although it's not really an understanding because there's no one there to understand is that there is nothing to understand, and there's nothing to understand because there's no one there to understand it, because there's no one there separate from life. See, all of this rests on the assumption that there is someone separate from life. It's the person separate from life that attempts to understand life. So this is what I always ask this: what if there is nothing to understand? What if life is exactly as it is? And that includes everything. That includes everything. It's an all-inclusive love. And I like the word love. It's or consciousness. Consciousness is all. It's all-inclusive. It includes everything because it is everything, and everything is made of it. So then you see, this is the problem with language, because then you can't really call it anything. You can't call it consciousness, because consciousness, even to you, the moment you use the word, it implies something outside of consciousness. That's the way language is structured. Language is inherently dualistic. The moment you say consciousness, the moment you say anything, the moment you have a thing, you have you've drawn a boundary, a border. You have the thing and everything outside the thing. So the moment you use the word consciousness or awareness or anything, actually, life, energy, whatever, you've made it into something. So you see, if everything is consciousness, if literally everything is consciousness, you cannot call it consciousness. So we talk about consciousness as if we know what we're talking about. We talk about awareness as if we know what we're talking about. So it's only once you begin to talk about awareness, in a sense, you're already into the dream. And then you start asking the question, is awareness separate from the contents of awareness? But only because you've already assumed that there is something called awareness that might be separate from anything else. So it's once you discover these assumptions on which all these questions are based, then the questions fall away. Then it's no longer a problem. Then you no longer need to somehow reconcile awareness with contents of awareness, because actually that split never happened in the first place. That split was never there in the first place. It only apparently came into being when you started to ask the question, is awareness separate from contents of awareness? So then all the questions fall away. And because, of course, what's discovered is that the questions are not separate from the one who asked the questions. The questions are not separate from the questioner, from the you. So it's like we ask the questions because we think that one day when we get the answers to the questions, we'll somehow reach freedom. Once we get the answers to our questions, we'll be free. But actually, we just ask more questions. We get all the answers. We get the answers. We go to the teachers. We get the answers, or the answers we think we need anyway, based on our conditioning. And those answers satisfy for a while, and then the questions return. It's because the questions are the questioner. We don't want to stop asking the questions, because if the questions stopped, that would be the end of the one who asked the questions. It would be the end of the questioner.
I like that. I mean, you say that the answers are the questioner.
Well, yeah,
the questions are the questioner. But I mean, it's kind of like maybe it's just a dance, and we're not really expecting that these answers are going to get us anywhere. But we're just going to say we don't want to stop dancing right now,
Well,
and then when it stops, right? I mean, let's just wait for the music to stop, or whatever.
The thing is, I'll just finish what I was saying.
Yeah, please.
No, you're absolutely right. I mean, there is, in a way, something quite beautiful about this dance of questions and answers. And I'm certainly not saying to anyone, stop asking questions or stop looking for answers, as if you had the choice. But it's when it's discovered that actually the questions that you ask are actually, they just emerge. These aren't really your questions. These aren't really your questions. The questions that you ask, What is the self? Is awareness separate from content of awareness? Who am I? When will I become enlightened? These questions all emerge from the conditioning. These questions all emerge from all the answers that you've already been given, that you've been collecting your whole life, which are the assumptions. So the questions that we ask come out of the assumptions that are already there, this huge pile of assumptions that we already have, in a way that the questions that we ask are just an expression of the concepts that are already there. The questions that we ask are just an expression of the assumptions that are already there. So what I'm saying is, and then you see, when we get new answers, they just feed this big pile of assumptions, which again, and then more questions emerge from that pile of assumptions, and this seems to be this never-ending cycle of questions, answers, questions, answers. But what I'm saying is, when that pile of assumptions is seen through, then that's the end of the questions. When it's seen that basically all these questions that we ask are based on these assumptions about life, and there's no need anymore to ask the questions. I say doesn't mean that you won't ask questions, but I would say that there's no need whatsoever to ask questions and wait for answers.
Like my little analogy was kind of like interesting to me, because like it just said that, okay, questions come up, perceptions come up, a concept comes up. And then what I was kind of hitting on was like I called it circulation. In other words, to let them go, and that the sickness of it was just holding on and saying, okay, that's a good belief, I'm going to keep it.
The question of having to let the questions go, or trying to let the questions go, or how do I let the questions go, which is one of the questions that the spiritual seeker asks, is how do I let go? How do I become free? That question becomes irrelevant when it's seen that when the question is seen, the seeing of the question as a question
we lose interest in it. It just goes by itself, In other words, the question is not how do I let it go, it's how do I stop holding on to it, I'm holding on to it because I believe that having that information is somehow useful, and I better hold on to that. And that's a belief, When that belief dissolves, and especially dissolves when there's no questioner, when you say, hey, who's here doing this anyhow, then there's nobody to hold or nothing to hold, and then everything just flows. This
comes back to what I was saying before, is there actually anything to know? Is there actually anything to know? And don't mishear that. That isn't a rejection of knowledge. I'm not saying get rid of knowledge as if you had the choice. Knowledge appears, or the conditioning, the concepts appear. There's no need to get rid of an appearance. This is one of the huge traps in the spiritual search, is the attempt to destroy the appearance or get rid of the appearance, because of course it's just another appearance coming in trying to get rid of the appearance. And that, if you fight an appearance, you're always going to lose. So this isn't about, I'm not saying get rid of the appearance. This is the possibility that actually there is nothing to know. There has never been anything to know. That life doesn't need you to know it or understand it, or that life can just be as it is. And that includes the questions arising. I mean, it's a very strange thing. We think questions need to be answered. What if the question can just be there? What if the question can just be there? It's funny that there's always this movement. This movement comes in. Need to know the answer. Need to know the answer. Need to know the quick. And then we go quick. We go and run to our teachers, run to the books, the teachers, the satsangs, whatever. Quick, need an answer. It's this kind of strange need for authority that we seem to have. Actually, what if it's okay to not know? What if actually that is the nature of life? What if that is your nature? Actually, is not knowing, and it's not knowing and not needing to know, because it's one thing not knowing and thinking that you need to know. What if there can just be not knowing And then even if the need to know appears in that not knowing, that's okay too. Even if the voice comes in that says you need to know, that can just be there as well. I mean, that's a radical embrace of life. That's meeting life face to face in all its mystery. Because of course its nature is mystery. Without the concepts, which is you have no way of knowing what this is. Before the concept comes in, I, and then from the I it projects a world. Prior to that story, there is no way of knowing what this is, because there's no one there to know it. And within that not knowing, let's just call it not knowing, and this is it's like a temporary language, because of course the moment you call it not knowing, so you see at that point you really have to stop talking. So if you're going to talk about this, you kind of have to acknowledge that you're kind of still in the appearance. You see, you have to use words and concepts to communicate. Without words and concepts, we just sit here in silence, and that could be quite nice. But I don't see silence as separate from noise. So whether talking happens or doesn't happen, it ultimately doesn't matter, you see. So words come out or they don't come out.
Attention moves on what appears, right? In a way, it seems like that's our experience, or it seems like that's what happens. It arises that way, that attention moves with what arises. And so then we talked about a question arises, and either there's interest in it and attention moves toward it, or there's no interest in it and attention doesn't even move. Or, you could maybe just say, well, it's kind of habitual, always going with the question. If it popped up, it must be good. Or you could say, oh, God, no, I'm really not interested anymore. Or you don't even have to say that. You just, with no interest, it just doesn't, it's just another passing.
I wonder how many of the questions that we ask are born out of a need to know. And I wonder, when that need to know is seen through, how many of those questions that we ask actually just become irrelevant, And then, it's absolutely fine if a question comes up. This is the thing, because ultimately you're not in control anyway. So, and ultimately there's no choice anyway. So a question comes up and you find yourself going with it, and you find yourself reading about, like before you were talking about the cancer book, and that's fine. Questions about the body, functioning of the body might arise, and you might find yourself looking for answers, being fascinated, and that's fine. But I guess when we're talking about what you really are, it's one way of saying it. It's one way of pointing to it. What you really are, beyond all concepts, then all the questions and answers in the world just fall away, And then what you're left with is life, here and now, life as it is. And I wonder how much of our question and answer activity, how much of our seeking activity is just a cunning way for the seeker to avoid life as it is, to move away from life as it is and into some imagined future when I finally will know, when I have the answer on this. When I have I will be someone who has the answers. That's what we really want. We want to be someone who knows. We want to be an enlightened person, or an awakened person, or a wise person, or person. I know, again, there's nothing wrong with that. This isn't a rejection of the person, because who would reject the person, right? But I can only speak from this experience, that the questions have just gone. The questions have gone. There's no questions here anymore. Of course, there's questions about, how do I get to the library, and how do I make fish and chips, and there's questions that enable me to function in the world. But the questions about the nature of the self, the nature of reality, the enlightenment, they mean nothing. They were just a product of conditioning. They were an expression of conditioning.
Sure.
And when they go, life becomes, or doesn't even become, it is seen to be extraordinarily simple, extraordinarily simple, extraordinarily simple. And again, it's not a rejection of questions. It's not that questions arise and I reject them. That's denial. I'm not talking about denial or arrogance, or questions arise and I dismiss them because I know better, or like the answers are given and I reject those answers because I know better. It's not that at all. That's denial. That's arrogance. It's a seeing through. It's not a rejection. It's not a denial. It's a seeing through. The answers, all the answers are concepts.
Nice. It's nice that you say that, because when you said it's not a rejection, because I think it is possible to shelve questions, just put them on the shelf, and just you start to by rote say, well, who's here or who am I, and go to the source of your next thought, or all these kind of tricks that take you to nothing, and just say stay there. Okay, so then you just put this question on the shelf. In other words, without really resolving it and just saying, well, taking it as a teaching that that's not me. The question's not me. The questioner's not me. And put that on the shelf. But still, it seems to me that it lacks a genuine, greater understanding, which is not an understanding of me either. Let's just make it, I don't know what, Somehow that lacks, and that question falls off the shelf at any time 20 years later, and it's still as active as it ever was. And you can choose to put it back on the shelf, or somehow when it comes down, sometimes you can actually really see through it, and then you really totally lose interest in it. There's nobody there to even have interest in it.
It's we don't really want. This is what it comes down to. I think we don't really want answers to our questions. What we long for more than anything, is for the questions to fall away. It's really got nothing to do with getting answers to questions.
I go for that totally. Like, I'm totally bored with all these answers, I wish they'd all go away, but, somehow they keep popping back.
Because at the end of the day, there is only one answer. The only answer is life. Life is the answer. Life as it is, right here, right now, breathing happening, the sound of this voice, feelings in the body happening, sounds in the room, the mug of tea. I spent so many years searching desperately, looking for answers. Desperately trying to find out the secrets of the universe, the secrets of the self, inner, outer secrets, and how do I become enlightened? How do I blah? How? All my questions essentially were variations of how do I. It was all about me. No matter what it was really all about me, really. As Krishnamurti said, there is no how. There is no how to be free. If you ask how, you stopped listening. And I recognized that all my questions, they were all variations of how do I get somewhere? How do I get somewhere? And of course, that's exactly the same thing as how do I get away from something else?
How do I get away from here, right?
But exactly, you see, the search for something in the future, the search for whatever, enlightenment, power, wealth, whatever, it's a movement away. It's a movement away from here, from life as it is. This isn't enough. This is what it always comes down to. This isn't enough. This life as it is isn't enough. I want more. So a movement towards is also a movement away. And the quest for knowledge, for certainty, the search to resolve my doubts, the search to silence the mind, to become space, to become all of it. It was all about me. It was all about the seeker. And there was no seeker. See, all of that was built on the assumption that there was someone here separate from life, separate from present sights and sounds and smells and yes, thoughts appearing, concepts appearing, sensations appearing. That's so what was discovered was that the whole thing, and I mean everything, I mean the whole lot, it was all built upon a faulty assumption. And when that faulty assumption was seen through, what was rediscovered, what was rediscovered right here and now was an intimacy, a relaxation, I mean, you can't. This is the thing. At this point, you can't really talk about it anymore because you make it into an it. And once you've made it into an it, you're back on the merry-go-round, searching for it, defining it, searching for it, trying to get it, trying not to lose it. But the thing is, it is not an it. It is life, and life is everything, and everything includes breathing happening and sensations in the body and sounds in the room. You cannot escape. You cannot escape life, and that is the freedom. The freedom is in the realization, for want of a better word, that you cannot escape life because there's no one here who can escape life. There's no one here separate from life. There is only life, and the seeker, Jeff, is simply another appearance in life. So whatever the seeker does, whatever Jeff does or did or didn't do, that's still just something else happening within life. Actually no more or less important than anything else happening in life. There's this radical equality, and it goes beyond the seeker and the sought. It goes beyond me and you and my awareness, your awareness, or my whatever. I mean, it's right here, and it never left. And when that's discovered, you see, when that intimacy is discovered, the questions, all the questions, they don't need to be answered because then they just seem to be part of this intimacy. The questions already arise in the intimacy. So you don't need to get the answers to find the intimacy. Because even in the arising of the question, the intimacy is there. The question itself is already saturated with intimacy. And then there's no need to look for an answer, although looking for an answer might happen. And even if looking for an answer happens, that's still part of the intimacy. But what I would say is it's the need. I think it's the need for answers that falls away. It's the need to ask the questions that falls away. And so it's not about letting go of questions, because then there's always the search, how do I let go of questions? But even in that, there's a massive assumption. How do I let go of questions? Even right there's a massive assumption. So when that assumption is ignored, then we go off and start to try and let go. The letting go is life itself, and this is the part that is impossible to put into words. The letting go is right there in the arising of the question, you see. In a sense, you could say, I would go as far as to say that the question lets go of itself. But we miss that, you see, we miss that because we so quickly move to seek, or we so quickly move to try and do something with the question, try and answer the question, or try and let go of the question, that we miss that actually in the very arising of the question, in that moment, there's already freedom. You see, the real freedom isn't freedom. I always say this. Apologies to any of you who've heard this 1,000 times, but my favorite thing to say. It's not my catchphrase. We're not talking about freedom from. we're not talking about freedom from the questions, or freedom from pain, or freedom from suffering, or freedom from myself, or freedom from anything. That isn't real freedom. That isn't real freedom. The true, authentic freedom that is already here and that can't be lost is freedom in. It's not freedom from, because that implies a movement away. Freedom in the future isn't real freedom. It's totally conditional, and therefore it's totally personal. The authentic freedom is the freedom in. So it's the freedom in the question. It's like, again, it's like the last place you'd ever look, because we're so busy trying to get answers to our questions. We miss the freedom actually right there in the arising of the question. The moment the question arises, it's already free. There's freedom right there. The question is made of freedom.
So then it's the freedom life. It's the freedom in the cancer too, right?
It's the freedom in
and
the
not
cancer.
From the cancer, in the cancer.
Exactly. It's the freedom in the pain, freedom in the questions,
in the
freedom in the seeking, in the confusion.
Yeah, in argumentation, in the freedom in war.
Yeah, freedom in war. Yeah, I mean it's it's the seeker goes to the guru, goes to the teacher, and asks, teacher, guru, help me. How can I be free from? And then list.
Yeah.
How can I be free from pain, free from suffering, free from questions, free from myself, free from mind, free from ego, free from contents of awareness? I mean, it doesn't really matter at the end of the day what you want to be free from. It's part of the same movement. So that I always say to people, I can't help you when people come to me and they say things like that. I say, I can't help you be free from anything. I never managed to discover freedom from. It was freedom in, and not even freedom in. I mean, you go further than that. It's freedom as question, freedom as pain. But it's so difficult to talk about, and it's so subtle, and it's so intimate and precious. It's a minefield when you open your mouth to begin to talk about this. It's an absolute minefield, and I think that's where the confusion comes from. I think this goes back to what you were saying right at the very beginning. Where does the confusion come from? Is it the fault? Is it anyone's fault? Is it the teachers not being clear enough, or is it me not hearing clearly, not hearing properly?
Tell everyone where you're calling from, Eugene.
Yeah, I'm calling from Leksand in Sweden.
Thanks for
Can you hear
coming
me?
on. Yeah, we
Hi.
sure do.
Hi.
Hello, Eugene. I can see you. I can hear you.
Okay, I can see you and hear you too. Let's see, Rich, I just wanted to say, just comment on your thing about cancer, that both Ramana Maharshi and Nisargadatta Maharaj had cancer in the end. I don't know if they really were too interested in curing that disease. I just wanted to comment on that. And then to Jeff, I mean, ultimately, I think that everything, I mean, there is no I, and there is no maybe reason to search or anything like that. But at the same time, I think everyone has to reach their bottom to realize that. I mean, we have to go through this journey to find out that there probably is nothing. If everything was perfect from the beginning, if we could just say that the things that are disturbing us are just thoughts, and we didn't focus on these things, then there wouldn't be any need to search. But I think that it's kind of necessary to go through that. Actually, I don't know. Do you have any comments on? I mean, did you hit bottom in a way that I mean, you have to come to, for me personally, I feel like I have to come to that point to realize what you're saying.
Well, no, yeah, I totally hear what you're saying. I mean, if someone had, years and years ago, when I was a very intense spiritual seeker, I was obsessed with enlightenment, with the idea of enlightenment. I was obsessed with becoming enlightened, and it literally drove me mad. If someone had told me, 5 years ago, that there was nothing to look for, there was nothing to find, well, first of all, I wouldn't have been able to hear it. I wouldn't have been able to hear it.
Right.
I mean, this isn't a rejection of seeking, because sometimes that's how it can sound. Sometimes what it sounds like I'm saying is, this is it, and if you're seeking, then there's something wrong with you, And I'm not saying that, because ultimately, you see, seeking is part of this too, because ultimately, even the seeker, even the one who thinks they're separate from life, it's just life. It's life dressed up as a seeker, looking for life. So even the seeker, even the most extreme seeker, the most miserable seeker, they might not know it. They might not know it, but they are life. They are 100% this. So in an ultimate sense, absolutely no difference between the way I am now and the way I was 5 years ago, in the sense that there is only life. 5 years ago, in the midst of my depression and misery, there was only life. And right now there is only life. It's just what, in the appearance, 5 years ago, that wasn't seen. In a way, it's the ultimate question. Do you have to go through all of that? Do you have to go through all the seeking and the intensity and the misery? And do you have to reach rock bottom? Do you have to reach rock bottom before this freedom is discovered? And I think everyone reaches rock bottom in their own way. You don't necessarily have to end up like I did. You don't necessarily have to end up naked in a ditch, having lost all your possessions, and you don't. Not that happened to me, but that would be a great story.
I don't want to get to that point either.
No.
I don't want to get to that point.
But the thing is, everyone seeks in their own way, and because the individual is a seeker. The individual, the moment you have an individual, the moment you have someone separate from life, you have separation, and the moment you have that separation from life, you have the longing to end the separation. So in a sense, the moment you have an individual, you have a seeker. The moment you have an individual, you have a seeker, and everyone seeks in their own way. For some people, it's spiritual seeking. It's the desperate search for enlightenment. For some people, it's worldly misery. It's pain. A lot of people have to deal with extreme pain. You see, there's no. This is the hardest thing to communicate, and this is what people really don't believe me when I say this. I don't expect them to, but it's. There's no blueprint, there's no rules. You don't have to go through what I went through or go through what anyone else went through. Like your own unique dream, your own unique life. That is, if we could tell a story about it, you could say that's what you've been given is your own dream. Everything that's ever happened to you within the story, that's all that's needed. You see, I mean, it's the hardest thing to communicate. I mean, really, in the story of Jeff, you see, I reached rock bottom years ago. I just depression, and then the spiritual seeking, and desperate search for enlightenment, and at some point what was realized was the absolute futility of seeking enlightenment, of me, a separate individual, trying to reach the end of being a separate individual, of me trying to do something to put an end to me,
Right.
The absolute futility of seeking an escape from life. You see, because really that's what it all was about. It was about Jeff trying to escape. It was about Jeff trying to escape. And at some point, the absolute futility of that was recognized. You know, who was trying to escape what? Who was trying to escape what? And so we kind of all came crashing down, and what was discovered in the midst of that. I mean, I call it failure. Some people think that the reason I talk about non-duality, or whatever you want to call this, is because I succeeded in my spiritual quest. I failed. It absolutely failed. It was because it was Jeff looking for something that ultimately he just couldn't have. It was Jeff looking for something that he couldn't have, and ultimately that ended in failure. Now, so what I would say is, ultimately, all seeking is doomed to fail by its very nature, and it fails during life, or it fails absolutely upon death. Let's see, but you see, everyone fails in their own way. I mean, and what was discovered here in the midst of that failure, it was Jeff's failure to become anything other than what he was. That it was my attempt to become anything other than what I was. It's bound to end in failure, because you are what you are. Life is what it is. So the whole thing was a fight. It was a fight. It was violence, in a sense, against life, and all violence is based on separation, and that's why ultimately all seeking ends in failure, the failure of separation. Right. Now, here's the thing. A happy seeker, I like to call them happy seeker. A happy seeker, in other words, a seeker who hasn't failed yet, or who hasn't begun to fail yet, is not going to be particularly interested in hearing this message. You see, right. If you're looking for something, if you're looking for enlightenment or wealth, and it's going well, everything's going your way. If you're looking for enlightenment, right, and you appear to be, you're kind of getting there, you think you're getting there, you're getting more and more, you're getting closer and closer towards the goal, and it's all going well, and no failure has happened yet, you're not going to be particularly interested in this message, in hearing this possibility that perhaps life is complete here and now. Perhaps you are already whole. Perhaps there is only already wholeness. You're not going to be particularly interested. In fact, you're not going to be able to hear it. Or you might hear it, but you might just react with anger, or you might dismiss it because it's too simplistic, it's too simple. I think on some level, the seeking has to fail, right, before you're even remotely interested in what I'm talking about, in what I'm sharing. So, in a sense, the fact that people listen to this, the fact that you are listening to this, and something is perhaps, I don't know, something is being recognized, something resonates, suggests that that failure, in a sense, has already happened or is already happening. But then, of course, you have to be careful not to turn the failure into the new goal, because then you see that right, absolute failure becomes new success, and then you're just back on the merry-go-round. Like, I need to fail more. Exactly. I need to fail more. It just becomes another form of seeking, actually. You see, the mind is ingenious. It will turn anything into another goal. So even failure, right, I've tried everything else, only failure will work for me. So now failure is your new goal, and so that becomes the new success. So you kind of have to be careful, because the mind, it's very tricky. It will turn anything into a goal. So that you could go as far as saying the failure of the seeking. It's hard to put into words. The failure of the seeking is in the hearing of this message. You see, that's in a sense, that's the sign that the failure has already begun. In a sense, you failed enough. You have failed enough. The failure is the failure of being a separate person. Only a separate person can fail. You, like what you really are, can't fail. It can't succeed, but it can't fail, because it's just life. It is life itself. It's beyond the opposites. Because success and failure, they're just dualistic opposites. It's all mind. They're just concepts. Success, failure, my success, my failure. What we're really sharing here, it's not even about failure, because it's beyond failure. It's beyond Jeff's or whoever's success and failure. What you are can't be touched by any of that. So it's a brilliant question, actually. Do I have to fail? Absolutely. And the answer is no.
Well, that's a good message. I won't try to fail.
And the thing is, even if you do fail,
it seems like any time I try to put my intention into something to make things, and it doesn't have to be in a spiritual way. It could just be in a social situation where I try to put my intention or my thoughts into something, and it doesn't go the way I think it should go. It gives me this just uncomfortableness, and it just shows me how powerless I am to control or make things into how I think they should be, and that's where my failure comes from.
Yeah, but that powerlessness in the face of life is quite beautiful, actually. I think in a million different ways we spend our lives running away from that powerlessness, but actually there's something quite beautiful in that powerlessness. The powerlessness is the recognition that you are not the master of life, and further than that, you are not separate from life. You are life. So the moment you come in, the personal self comes in with your demands about wanting to make life go a certain way. In a sense, it's about controlling life. Of course, you're setting yourself up against life. It sounds very wonderful and positive that you're going to make your life work, you're going to get what you want. Actually, if you look very carefully, that there's a subtle form of violence there. There's a subtle separation there. I'm going to make life go the way it's all about it's all about me. And what I'm saying is that's actually the illusion. The illusion is that you are separate from life. The illusion is that you can make life go a certain way. So because the moment you aim for success, you are creating failure, because success and failure they have to go together in this dream world, in the world of opposites, in the world of duality. The moment you have success, you must have the possibility of failure. There's a perfect balance, There's a perfect balance. The moment you are aiming towards success, you are creating the possibility. You're bringing failure into the world where it didn't exist before. And again, I'm not saying it's wrong to try to be successful. I'm not saying that at all. I'm not saying, I'm not telling anyone what to do. I'm not saying it's wrong to try and be the best that you can at something, or to be a great artist or a great actor or whatever. I'm not saying that. I'm looking at the mechanics of it, the moment you and then when you finally get your success, finally you get what you want, finally you're a success. Now you're a successful person. Now you have to spend the rest of your life holding on to that success.
Right.
So failure is still there. Underneath success there is always failure, because they have to go together. You cannot have one without the other. That's That's the nature of duality. So what I'm suggesting is what you truly are is beyond both. It can't be touched by the greatest success, but also it can't be touched by the greatest failure.
Jeff, I just wanted to say, I think, at least for me, the realization that I'm coming to is not to focus every time I bring myself into it, and to focus on these intentions. That there's an I to anytime I try to focus on it. That's where the problems come in. That's where I find the most.
Yeah.
It just never turns out the way I think it would turn out.
Yeah.
And this exhaustion is coming to the realization that it's futile, or it's not productive to put yourself in your intentions.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I think it's dangerous to make that a goal too.
Yeah.
Making
anything
a goal.
Yeah. So then you're left in this seemingly tricky situation, because on one hand you see the futility of setting intentions, but on the other hand you also see the danger in the attempt to give that up. You see right. That actually me trying to give up intentions, it's really part of the same game, actually. It's me setting intentions or me rejecting intentions. So then
exactly.
Then where are you left? So you're left in this very strange place of really not knowing, and you're left with life. You're left with perhaps some exhaustion, perhaps some confusion, perhaps the mind saying, well, what do I do? If I can't do this, I can't do that. I really don't know. You're left in this place of, I really don't know.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And what I discovered was that place of not knowing was home. That was home. That is home.
I'm starting. I mean, I know it's not a mental thing, because anytime I put my mental thought into saying that this is good or this is okay, then things just turn upside down. I'm not quite there. I mean, I don't want to say but I mean, thoughts still go through my head. I still chase after them like I have before, but I guess they're not as powerful. I mean, they're still disturbing me, but this place is it's really I don't know. It feels it's hard to describe. I don't know what to do.
Yeah, and that's the beginning of real freedom.
I guess I want to put a label on it, and that's probably the problem, because it's just
what if you see, it's interesting because you said that you're not there yet, so that means automatically you must have an idea of what being there would look like. So in that moment you've rejected what's appearing now, because this can't be it, right? So it can't be this. It can't be this feeling of exhaustion and thoughts swirling around. It can't be this. And so then the image of what it should look like comes in.
Right. And
then you get to say, I'm not there yet, and you get to have the identity of someone who isn't there yet. Well, so you in your image, freedom doesn't include exhaustion. It doesn't include thoughts swirling around. It doesn't include all of this. That's so what I'm suggesting. What if freedom is all inclusive? What if freedom includes everything? So what's wrong with a feeling of exhaustion appearing? What's wrong with thoughts appearing?
It's just what we said before, like freedom, not freedom in exhaustion, not freedom from exhaustion.
Because this is the thing. The exhaustion is interesting because Because we think that freedom can't possibly be an exhaustion, can it? Freedom, I have to get rid of my exhaustion before I can be free. I have to get rid of my confusion before I can be free. I have to get rid of my fear before I can. I. That's all about me moving away from something, moving towards something. You see, this is what you see. The freedom, it's even there in the exhaustion. This is. I mean, when it was first discovered here, it was. I mean, it was shockingly. I mean, it's shocking in a way that freedom could be so radically inclusive. But what if it includes everything? What if it is a present, every single feeling that arises, every thought that arises, every sensation in the body? What if freedom includes, the feeling of your breathing happening and the heart beating? And see, it's even there in the exhaustion, because ultimately, even the exhaustion, even the frustration is pointing to this. Everything is pointing to this, because ultimately, you see, this is not your exhaustion. This is not your frustration. This is just exhaustion appearing. This is just frustration appearing. You're not doing exhaustion. You're not doing frustration. You're not doing fear, if fear is arising, or whatever. And there is such a truth in the exhaustion. It's the exhaustion at trying to be separate, trying to be a separate person, trying to be a seeker. It is ultimately exhausting. If everyone was honest, if everyone in the world was honest, everyone would say that on some level they are totally exhausted from trying to maintain this facade, this fight against life. Fighting life is exhausting. So what does the exhaustion say? The exhaustion says, yeah, it is. The exhaustion says, yeah, fighting life is exhausting. There is such a truth in exhaustion, but it's so easy to tell a story about it. Oh, I'm exhausted. There's something wrong with me. I'm exhausted. If I was successful, if I was succeeding, I wouldn't be exhausted. Blah 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 blah. Or if I was there, I wouldn't be frustrated. If I was there, I wouldn't be exhausted. But without the story,
it's my condition.
Yeah, it's the conditioning. It's the conditioning that comes in and says exhaustion bad, frustration bad, what's bad. The conditioning is always making a problem out of everything.
Right. And in the everyday world, everyone puts on their masks and they don't show these type of things, and I think that's the reality when I don't know what goes on behind closed doors and inside them. But that's never shown. I mean, so it's when everything seems like an illusion. I don't even need these people around me anymore. My head's going on 24/7. I don't even need an audience. It's judging me and saying that this is good and bad, and I could be home alone and I have my own entertainment all day.
Well, that's it. I mean, you start to see that you literally carry the world with you. That's the conditioning. All the voices that you put up in your whole life, all the rules, the regulations, the opinions, you carry that with you. And I would go so far as to say that whole bundle of conditioning, that world, that is you. That is the self. That is the ego, the mind. But the thing is, it's not something that you need to get rid of. It's not something to fight, because ultimately it's just thoughts appearing. It's just the whole world is just thoughts appearing here, now. That's the only place that thoughts ever appear, is here and now. That the whole world is just ultimately a thought appearing now. And you see, thoughts can just be there. Life doesn't reject thoughts, because ultimately life is thoughts. Life, oneness, life, whatever you want to call it, oneness. I'll call it oneness. Oneness appears as everything. It appears as this body, and as maybe a feeling of exhaustion, maybe a feeling of confusion. It appears as thoughts, or all the thoughts. So all of that is already oneness. It's already wholeness. It's wholeness appearing as everything, literally everything. But the thing is, the individual comes in, or the person who thinks they're separate, and they go, well, I don't want that bit of everything. I don't want that bit of everything. I don't want that piece of oneness. I don't want that piece of one. And that's where the war begins. So, I mean, you're absolutely right. The world,
I think,
appears here. Yeah. Go
on. I think that's the original thought that's causing all the problems. Is the thought that there's an I.
Yeah.
That's experiencing all these things, and this preciousness of holding on to this I.
Yeah.
Even through the misery, that this I, through the misery, is trying to hold on, even through the misery, by saying that there's someone who's suffering.
Well, it just becomes a identity. It's another. It's a great
very
way.
Tricky.
Yeah, it's a great way to maintain an identity. Is to say, I mean, you can say that
I don't know.
You could say I've failed at everything. I've tried everything. I failed at everything. I don't know who I am. I don't know what's going on. I don't know what to do. I don't have an identity anymore. But then you're absolutely right. Then you get a new identity as I'm suffering, my suffering, my misery, my exhaustion, my confusion, and before you know it, you've got a very strong identity again. The I, the ego, mind, whatever you want to call it, will latch onto anything to give itself an identity. It's like, I don't know who I am. I don't know who I am. Quick! Find something to latch onto. Ah, great, exhaustion. Great. Now I'm an exhausted person. Now. Quick! Ah, fear. Great. Now I'm experiencing extreme fear, and now in a way it's safe again. Life is safe again because you know who you are. Now I know who I am. I'm exhausted. I'm frustrated. Great. Now I know who I am. I can go and seek for help. I can go and look for help.
But sooner or later, like, interest just drops. You're not interested, right? Or no, there's nobody to be interested.
The interest in fixing yourself falls away. It's the interest in fixing anything, fixing the exhaustion, fixing the frustration. Because then what you come to see, actually, it's the attempt to fix exhaustion that is the exhaustion. It's the attempt to fix frustration that is the frustration. It's just a huge vicious circle. It's just this giant vicious circle. The mind will use anything to keep itself going, to get an identity. Without the search for a solution, where is the problem? Right now, right here and right now, without the search to be fixed, what's broken? What's broken in the present appearance of life? It's only a thought that would come in and say, this is broken, go and fix it. But without that, life can just be life. So there can just be feelings in the body happening. There can be maybe a tightness in the stomach or whatever. There can be thoughts arising and falling away. There can be sensations. There can be sounds. Everything, literally everything is included, because everything is life. And even then, what's really exciting in a way is that this isn't actually a rejection of the I. It's not a rejection of the I. It's not a rejection of the individual, because even the story of I, the story of me, the story of my life, the story of that can arise too. That's allowed to arise too. The story of Jeff and his past, the story of, or whatever, the story of you and your exhaustion or whatever. Even that isn't rejected. That is still allowed to arise. So literally everything is allowed, but it's not actually you allowing life. You see, I mean, can you see the arrogance in that? Actually, the idea that you need to allow life. Life doesn't need you to allow it. Life is just life. Life is just life. And then within life, you appear and your attempt to allow life, or your attempt to escape, or whatever. But that's just something else appearing in life. And it's allowed to appear. It's allowed to appear. Not by you. It's allowed to appear because it's appearing. So the allowing is the appearing. So the exhaustion, I mean, this is the real freedom. The exhaustion is allowed to appear because it's appearing.
A lot of people are calling in. Should we take a few calls?
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Thanks, Eugene.
Thank you, Jeff.
Thank you so
thanks,
much.
Rich.
Thanks, Eugene.
Lovely talking to you.
Okay.
Take care.
Okay.
Thanks.
Hi,
there.
Jeff.
Hi.
First of all, thank you so much. I really enjoy listening to you and your books too, and wherever I read you, and the contact with Killaby and all of that. It's wonderful.
Thank you.
Hearing everything you're saying, I have this question. In the end, is there any practices or exercises or anything that you would tell someone to help, or whatever that means, dissolve the self-image?
Well, I have two answers. The first answer is if you're really listening to what I'm saying, the need for any practice will fall away, will become irrelevant. If you're really hearing what I'm saying, the need for any practice whatsoever won't be there. At the same time, of course, practices could arise. I'm not telling anyone what to do. I'm not saying don't do a practice, because who am I to tell anyone how to live? You find yourself practicing or not practicing. You find yourself meditating or doing self-inquiry, and and the second answer is on a if I'm having a one-to-one conversation with someone, maybe I might find myself suggesting something for that particular person in that particular context at that particular time. But I never know in advance. I never know a moment in advance what that will be. And I mean, the practices certainly have their place, within within the dream. They certainly have their place, like meditation, for example. If you think you have something called a busy mind, and you think you want something called a more peaceful mind, then within your dream, meditation practices appear, and you find yourself meditating, and you find yourself moving towards something called a peaceful mind, and there's nothing wrong with that. That's just something that it plays itself out. And for example, if someone, if my wife came up to me and she was really upset about something, if she was in a lot of pain, or maybe say her mother had just died or something, what I might do is in that moment try and help her, in a very human way. I wouldn't necessarily say to her, "It's not your pain. It's not your mother. There's no one there." Although in an ultimate sense, of course, that's true. In an ultimate sense, that's true. But you wouldn't necessarily say it. So I'll go back to what I said in the beginning. If the need for practices simply falls away when it's seen actually there's no one here separate from life. That there is only life appearing, and that life appearing isn't something that you can work your way towards, because it's not in time, and any practice implies time. It implies a movement towards something or away from something. So in life itself, in life as it is, there is no practice. But of course, within life, practices can appear.
is this something like, for example, Ramana's final kind of message to everybody, that everything's ordained and essentially what's going to happen will happen, what won't happen won't happen, and there's nothing to do but just be?
But that's, yeah. I mean, it's that can be. I'm not quite sure what he meant by that because I never spoke to him, but you have to be careful because then you start getting this concept that the universe is a predestined universe, that everything has already been planned. You see, but actually, this is a movie. This is a dream, a movie, a play, whatever you want to call it, that hasn't been written yet. There's no one behind the movie or outside of the movie who has written the movie. There's no entity outside of the play that has planned the play. There is only the play, and
how is that known? I mean, to the form there. How is that known, and why is that not a concept?
It is a concept when we talk about it. This is the problem. I mean, the moment I open my mouth about it, it's become a concept. Well, I mean, I guess an answer I could give it: it's known because nothing is known. The play is also the not knowing. It's the play of not knowing. You see, because any idea about the play that it's predestined simply happens within the play. So there's nothing outside of the play. The play is writing itself. That this is the play. It hasn't been written yet. No one knows. No one has written this play. No one is outside of the play, because the play is everything. It hasn't been written yet. No one's. It's like it's a movie that no one's seen yet. So you have to be careful when you say that what will happen will happen. And of course, in one sense, it's true. But the moment that becomes a concept, you see, then the individual starts to believe that what will happen will happen. So it becomes a predestined universe. So then the individual, it's like the idea of that there's no choice. It's the same thing. There's no choice. There's no control. It's a pointer. It's a beautiful pointer. But the danger is that then the individual starts to believe that there's no choice, and then so the individual, that becomes the new religion for the individual, the religion that there is no choice, so it doesn't matter what I do because it's all predestined. That's another concept. So without all the concepts, you can't even say that. You can't even say that what will happen will happen.
Now, when you're saying what will happen, in a way, it's a mind trip because it's what will is a future, and so then you're trying to say that somehow mix up everything is, and then everything will be at the same time, and try to mix those two up. You're bound to get a mess.
Yeah. So so what you're left with is in that not knowing is just this. Just this, literally the present appearance of life, and any concept about what has happened or what will happen is just something else appearing in life, and life is everything.
In other words, concept itself is separation. It's a separation. Yeah. It's separation.
Yeah. But I know that not a word I say is true. I know that. I absolutely know that. There's not a single word that I say is true. I mean, but the alternative. You are? I mean, the thing is that the alternative is not to say anything. But then, of course, when it's recognized that actually noise and silence are equal, then it's once you see clearly that you can't talk about this, that not a word you say about this is true, then in some very strange way you're free to talk about it, simply because you don't believe it. I don't believe a word of this.
The big thing is it's for people to see that it's not just that the words said about this are inadequate, but the words said, therefore the thoughts said about everything is inadequate.
Yeah.
Things that people do believe in, like their world, their world. I mean, it's all like that.
Yeah, I mean the whole world, the entire world it's here. And when there's no thought, there's no world. When there's no thought, when there's no concept, there's no world. And it's not even a world of no concepts, because even that is wiped out. It's not even a non-conceptual world. Even the non-conceptual world, that's wiped out. Everything is wiped out. Even the idea of everything being wiped out is wiped out. So then you're not even left with nothing, because that's where the mind goes. Is if everything is wiped out, there's nothing. Then of course even nothing is another concept, and at that point, there's really nothing you can say. I mean, at that point where nothing is everything, where nothing is everything, where radical emptiness, total emptiness is total fullness. It's like because language is dualistic, and so it's like the dualities just merge into each other and disappear, and then there's really nothing to say, and yet words come out. There's nothing. I mean, that's the hilarious thing in a way about talking about non-duality and writing books of non-duality. There's really nothing to say and no one to say it to, and yet. And it's there. It's the and yet and that's where we begin talking. You know, there's nothing to say, no one to say it to, and yet there's this dance. There's this play of appearances. There's this play of me and you and writing books and talking and going shopping and all of that. That plays itself out. But in an ultimate sense, there's really nothing to say. And that's the radical freedom. I mean, that's the freedom. That's the total freedom. Nothing to say. Nothing needs to be said, because life is as it is, and not one word that you say or don't say can add or subtract from that, which is what you are.
Let's take another call. So I know there's a lot of people that have been calling, so give it a hit. You're going to get caught.
Okay, very good. Hi, Jeff. Hi, Michelle.
Hello.
Hi.
Yeah, this is quite interesting. I happen to be an avatar master, and I enjoyed the beginning of the conversation, and I picked up on a couple of things that, Jeff, you said that caught my attention. And the first thing is that the concept of freedom as, and the other one is that it seems that when we are living that way, we get bored of something and then we get back into the mind or into the story and that sort of thing, and we are not doing that anymore. So I had experienced that as an avatar master or avatar student, every time going through the courses and being among hundreds of people that living that realization that the mind is quiet, we're just living as freedom. And it's beautiful for a week or so. And then when you go home, you get caught in life and you lose it because you don't know how to maintain that freedom as with your everyday life.
Yeah.
And that brings me to the question that the gentleman before me asked. It seems like that our brain, our mind is wired to be a doer, and when we are doing, we don't know how to do things and think, and at the same time be free and see the formless in the question, the formless in the doing, the, chopping wood and carrying water while staying freedom as. And maybe there is a room for a practice to change that habit and rewiring the brain and or some sort of practice that we could, maybe train ourselves to do that more and more and more, so it will become our default operation. You follow what I'm saying?
Yeah. So you said before about living as the freedom as, and sometimes it feels that you're living as the freedom, and then very quickly you go back to everyday life and you appear to lose the freedom. I would say that you appear to lose the freedom because you're trying to keep it. This freedom that I'm talking about, it can't be owned. It's not something that you can own. It's not a state. It's not an experience, and it's not a state. Every state has a beginning and an end. Every experience has a beginning and an end. It's in time. So, and of course, if you can be in a state, you can also be out of the state. If you can be in an experience, if you can have an experience, you can also lose an experience.
So it's a matter of attention, right? Because the formless is within the form, as the form is within the formless. And it's a matter of being able to maintain our attention from either direction.
Yeah. So what I'm saying is, that appears to be a useful practice. It appears to be a useful practice when you think that they are separate. As long as you think that the form and the formless are separate, it appears to be a useful practice to divert your attention with one and the other. But I'm saying that practice itself rests on an assumption that the form and the formless are separate in the first place.
Uh-huh.
So that's why you appear. Of course, you appear. All practices appear to work. For a while anyway. You appear to be able to say, I used to meditate quite a lot, and I appeared to be able to. I would sit down to meditate, and I would focus attention on my body and breathing and thoughts, and I appeared to be able to move into a more peaceful state. So that appeared to work. The practice appeared to work until it was discovered that actually there was no one there separate from life doing the practice. A practice usually rests on the assumption of separation. Because I used to believe that I had a busy mind and I wanted a peaceful mind. So the practice helped me to move from one point to another point. Well, of course, when it was discovered that actually it wasn't my mind in the first place, they weren't my thoughts in the first place, then the need to do a practice dissolved because the thoughts weren't owned anymore by anyone. They were just thoughts appearing. They weren't my thoughts. They're just thoughts appearing. And so then there was no need to move from one state to another state, because in a sense it all became the same state. It's like practice only seemed to work when you separate states. But when you see that essentially there is only one state, there's only one state, because there's no separation, then the need for practices falls away. So I'm not saying that practices are wrong. I'm not saying that they're wrong or they're bad or anything like that. I'm not saying that. I'm saying that the fundamental question really is who does the practice? Who is doing the practice? Because usually with a practice, you do a practice with a concept of you want to move from A to B. You do a practice usually to get somewhere, to move somewhere, to move from one state to another, or to move from formless to form or form to formless. So yes, the practice appears to work, but it's in appearance only.
So it's like the appearance of the freedom from instead of the freedom in, or freedom within.
Yeah, because ultimately the form, it's the formless appearing as form. It's not actually form within formless, or formless within form. It's the formless appearing as form, so that the form is made of formless. But then you see you can't separate form and formless. You can't even say that anymore. You can't even say formless and form, because it's all formless or it's all form. So you can't call it formless or form anymore. So then all that's left is just the present appearance of life, which is the manifestation of freedom. That life itself is the freedom. It's the freedom as thoughts arising and breathing happening, feelings in the body happening, sounds appearing, thoughts appearing and disappearing. See this? Well, what's discovered is this. This was never about you. It was never about you. It was never about you. It was always about life, and life itself doesn't need a practice, because you could say that life itself is the practice. Life itself is the practice. It's like you are. For me, in my experience, the practices fell away. When it was discovered that actually, sitting down to meditate was equal to walking through the park. It was equal to sitting in a cafe with friends, because it was the same. It was the one who sat down to meditate was the one who walked through the park. It was the same being. There was really no separation. So then what I found was practices naturally fell away, because what was discovered that life itself is already whole. And really all practices are about discovering wholeness. In one way or another, we practice to, in some way, discover wholeness, to reach wholeness. But when it's discovered that life itself is wholeness, it's an expression of wholeness, then there's no need to do a practice to reach wholeness. Although, of course, within life, practices could appear, and there's nothing wrong with that. You find yourself doing practices or not. But all I can say from my experience is that it was the need to do any specific practice that fell away when it was discovered that life as it is already whole. That this is the freedom this is already an expression of freedom. It's already an expression of wholeness, right here and right now. So that discovery makes things infinitely more simple. There's this radical simplicity, right at the heart of experience. This radical simplicity, and that simplicity isn't separate from what you are. And when that simplicity is discovered, and of course it could be discovered in the midst of practice, so that the practice is not a block to this simplicity, because ultimately the simplicity It's there within the practice as well. So what it really comes down, the ultimate question really is who practices, who is doing this practice, and when that is discovered, then that's the foundation on which the practice is built. The foundation on which the practice is built is the assumption that there is someone there doing a practice. There's someone there who wants to move from formless to form or form to formless. So when that assumption underlying the practice is exposed, then who knows? Then who knows? You might find yourself still doing practices or not, but it doesn't matter anymore. It becomes equal. In Zen, they call it one taste. It's one taste. So in other words, the taste of sitting down to do a practice is the same as the taste of walking through the park or meeting a friend in a cafe. It's all made of the same stuff. It's formless appearing as form. It's nothing appearing as everything. It's nothing appearing as everything. And at that point, again, you have to let the words go. When the formless is seen to be the form, then you can't even speak about the formless and the form. Then all you're left with is, again, what it always comes down to, what is the present appearance of life, is right here and right now, sitting here, breathing, and thoughts arising, feelings in the body arising, sounds happening. And there's no, in the recognition of that, no practice is needed. Although, as I said before, practices appear to be necessary until it's seen that they're not. So I'm not saying no to you.
Yeah, I understand. It seems like that I'm experiencing the formless or noticing it in everything, but the intensity of that noticing is not to the extent that I can say that I'm free, because there's a part of me still identifying with the thought or with the object or whatever. So
yeah, but you see that's the play. This isn't about. It's what I was saying before. This isn't about getting rid of form. This isn't about getting rid of the appearance. You see.
Mm-hmm.
This isn't about getting rid of the story of you. That because of course within the story, within the appearance, you're a person in a world. Within the story, you're an I in a world. And of course, ultimately, the world is a projection of I, and I is a reflection of the world. But this isn't about getting rid of form, because that's one of the traps in the spiritual search. Is I was saying at the beginning of this webcast that one of the traps in the spiritual search is that we think we need to get rid of form before we can enter the formless. You see, so that then in a way it becomes a subtle war against form. So formless, we think formless is higher than form, and then we attempt to get rid of identification. We attempt to get rid of form. But when it's discovered that actually form is formless, that the nature of form is formlessness, then there's no need anymore to get rid of the manifestation. There's no need anymore to get rid of the appearance, because the appearance can be there, because its nature is formless, its substance is formless, you see. And that formless doesn't reject anything. You could say another way of saying that is that everything is life, everything is made of life, or consciousness, awareness, oneness, whatever word you want to use. Everything is life, and everything is made of life. So life itself doesn't reject anything that appears. So life itself doesn't reject the form, because the form is life. And when that's discovered, there's no need anymore to banish the form from your consciousness. There's no need anymore to reject the names and the labels and the concepts. There's no need anymore to reject the story. I am a person in a world. I'm a person sitting on a chair. I'm me and you. There's no need to get rid of that. Because you see, if it really were possible to get rid of all form, if it really were possible to get rid of the entire appearance, there would be no world. The world is the appearance. With no appearance, there's no world. There would be nothing. There would be no one to talk to. This conversation wouldn't be possible. Nothing would be possible. You wouldn't even be able to say that you had reached the formless. That wouldn't be possible. Nothing would be possible. And yet that's for a lot of spiritual seekers, that's the goal. They really want to reach the formless.
That's not the goal, that's a misunderstanding, right?
It's understanding, yeah.
Well, it's beautiful what you just said. I mean, I try to come up with that in the beginning, that those two ingredients together, they're never apart, so they can't even be together. And then out of that comes understanding, and the only thing is a circulation. Let it go, let it come, let it arise, and let it die. And a new one rises right away.
But that's the dance. Yeah, sorry, go.
That discovery you're talking about, I understand it intellectually, and the question is, how do you bring it into completion on the experiential awareness level?
I'm saying it's right there already. I'm saying it's there already right now, in your experience right now. I'm not talking about a future attainment or a future state or a future experience, because of course, as I said before, all of that is in time. So the intellectual understanding, I mean, of course, again, there's nothing wrong with intellectual understanding, but ultimately intellectual understanding is just a bunch of concepts. It's a bunch of concepts, and no amount of concepts can take you to life, because concepts are just something that appear in life, as life. It's life appearing as concepts.
Can we also say, like, intellectual understanding is also experiential awareness? Because we shouldn't really make those, because like just what Alexander said, how do I get from intellectual understanding to experiential awareness?
That's
what they need the process for, right? And so look, it is an experience, and maybe not the one you're expecting.
Yeah. But can you hear the assumption in that question? How do I get from intellectual understanding to
experiential awareness?
They're
the same.
But there's already an assumption within that question about me getting from here to somewhere else. Like, it's right there. The assumption is right there already in that question. Actually, is there really anyone here separate from life right now who can move from here to there?
Well, more like that you are seeing it clearly, and I have glasses that are clouded and obscuring for me to see it completely as you described.
You think that you have clouded glasses.
No, it's an expectation, right? It's like saying, no, it must be cloudy because it shouldn't be like this, because somebody told me that there's experiential awareness and it's different from thoughts. Thoughts are another kind of experience. That's what I say.
And this is
I'm talking about seeing the formless within every form.
Yeah.
I have a sense of it, but it's not a clear vision.
So what would you expect a clear vision to look like? How would it be different?
I will not contract, and there would be some effortlessness in going about life.
So what I'm suggesting is the effortlessness. The effortlessness is right there, right now, within your experience. But it's within that effortlessness that effort arises. Effort appears within the effortlessness that you are. That's your nature, is effortlessness. But within that effortlessness, what appears is the effort to understand. What appears is the effort to move from intellectual understanding to clear seeing. That's the contraction. The contraction is the effort to reach the experiential awareness. You see, so what the mind says is, no. The mind says, no. Once I reach experiential awareness, then the contraction will go. What I'm suggesting is that the contraction is the very effort right now of a separate individual to attempt to reach experiential awareness. That is the contraction.
Yeah, that too.
It's
So,
about
okay.
expectation, like
Wait,
when
wait,
Eugene
wait.
was
So, right.
Eugene was talking about exhaustion, right? And he didn't
Listen,
expect that, right?
Yeah.
Right then, in that moment when you were laughing, when there was laughter, where was the contraction? In that moment of laughter, where was it?
I was not aware of it. It was gone.
It only appears to be there when you think about it. It's a construction of thought. This person who, this identity of I'm someone who I don't understand. I only have intellectual understanding. One day I'll reach experiential awareness. That whole thing is an identity. It's a construction of thought. I'm saying in that moment when you were just laughing openly, that identity wasn't there. There was no one there. There was no one there who needed to move from here to there. But then thought came back in. Thought comes back in and says, no. I am someone. I only have an intellectual understanding. My glasses are clouded. One day, in time, I will reach clear seeing. So you bring time into it. Time enters. Time wasn't there before, but now time appears.
Practices come in.
And that's when practices are born. So practices are born out of the assumption that there is someone there who lives in time. That's the origin of practice.
Yeah. Well, another great teacher, Lester Livingstone, said that everything is born out of three desires, or three wants: wanting control, wanting survival, and wanting approval.
Yeah.
And
I think they're all the same thing.
Yeah,
Sorry, go on.
they're also born from the formless and can be viewed like that. And it's a matter of allowing that want to drop as well, or to fall away as well.
I think in your direct experience now, can you find any separation? I mean, right now, can you find any separation between formless and form? Or is that just a thought that comes? Is it thought that comes in and labels formless and form? Before thought, can you really say that there is formless and form?
Well, I usually immediately identify with my thoughts, so I don't see what comes before the thought, or where the thoughts are.
Okay, so I
Yes.
So breathing happen. There's breathing's happening, and feelings in the body happening, sounds happening,
Mm-hmm.
and then maybe some identification happening.
Mm-hmm.
Where's the problem?
It feels contracting.
Contraction.
Contractions in my body.
Okay, so what's wrong with contraction? Before the thought that says, so the thought says there's contraction. Thought says there's contraction. Contraction is bad. I need to be expansion. I need expansion. I don't want contraction. I want expansion. So that even to call it contraction, that's already the self. That's already the me. The me comes in, calls it contraction, and separates it from expansion. So you're back in the world of duality without the story that there's contraction, and without the search for expansion. Where's the problem in direct experience, in right here, right now? Where's the problem before thought comes in and says, that's contraction, that's my contraction? Because you see, ultimately, it's not even your contraction. The problem comes when the contraction is owned. It's the ownership. It's the ownership of contraction. So the mind says, it goes contraction, and it's my contraction. And then you're back into a personal story about my contraction and getting rid of my contraction.
Yeah.
So where's the problem before everything is owned?
No, there's no problem.
There's no problem. So I'm saying that's the freedom. That's the freedom. Right, it's right there. It's so simple. It's so present. It's so alive, and it's so simple that we always overlook it, because in a sense it's nothing. That freedom. It can't be owned, it can't be held, it can't be grasped, it can't be possessed. In a sense, it's nothing. So the mind isn't interested in that freedom, in a way, because the mind doesn't get anything. There's no result. There's no prize, because it's so simple and so natural. So the mind ignores that freedom and goes off in seeking the end of contraction, or seeking clear seeing, or seeking experiential awareness. But right here and right now, without ownership, where is the problem?
It's how like mind wants to solve a problem, and you're just saying, well, step over it and notice that it's nothing you're stepping over, and you say, wait a minute,
well,
I've worked a long time to solve this thing. I'm almost there.
I don't want to ignore that
one.
I'm not even saying step over mind, because you see, mind is just thought. When we say mind, all we really mean is present thought arising. There's no solid entity called mind. There is just, all you will ever find is just present thoughts arising. So there's no, when that's seen, there's no need to step over. I know that's not what you meant, Richard, but there's no need to step over or ignore or dismiss thoughts. Thoughts can just be there. Again, when thoughts are not owned, when thoughts are just seen as thoughts, when contraction is just seen as contraction. I mean, it's not even, even that is a story. It's energy in the body, it's sensations. So it's sensations in the body accompanied with a story of my contraction. It's sensations in the body accompanied with a story about me and my body, me and my contraction, me and my search for expansion, so that's all. That doesn't have, you don't have to get rid of that. That can be there as well. All of that is also allowed to arise. The thoughts, the stories, that's allowed to arise, because that also is life. That's also life. But those stories can't contain life, because they're just, those stories and concepts, they're just happenings within life. So again, it comes back to, right here and right now. Where's the problem? And then, even when the thought comes in and says there's a problem, is that a problem? See, this freedom that I talk about, it's all inclusive. It even includes the thought that might say there is a problem. Even that's not a problem in this freedom, because this freedom is everything. So even the thought that says there's a problem, there's no problem with that thought arising, because it's just a thought arising. And the contraction arising, where's the problem? When it's not owned, when it's not even called contraction, where's the problem? When thoughts arise, when there's no attempt anymore to get rid of thoughts, or to shut thoughts up, or to deny thoughts. If thoughts can just be there, where's the problem? You'll never ever find a problem. But that's there always. Go on.
I think you defined the problem earlier by saying that when the mind kicks in and says it's me or it's mine, that's when it stops.
That's where it begins. That's where problems are brought into the world, where problems didn't exist. The problems arise with me. There can only be problems in relation to an I, to a me, because life itself doesn't have any problems with itself, because life itself is everything. Life can't have a problem with itself, because life can't separate itself from itself, because life is everything. So it's the I, it's the me that comes in. The moment you have a me, you have your world, me and my world, me and my problems. And the moment you have, this is interesting, the moment you have a problem, what do you have? You have search for a solution. They always arise together. Problem, search for solution. So problem arises, and immediately search for solution. And usually the solutions are the solutions given by other people. They're the solutions given by teachers and gurus, etc., etc. So that all the conditioning comes in immediately. And that's usually the practices. So it's like there's a problem. There's a problem here. Quick, do a practice to get rid of the problem. So in a sense, already you've kind of moved away from life. You've assumed that there's a problem, because you've assumed that there's a me who has a problem.
Yeah, as soon as I am operating as me, then the me has to do something. The me has to get engaged in something. So it cannot just be,
Yeah, it's like quick, do something. So quickly we move into doing. In a way, I wonder if it's sounds kind of strange. That's good. I wonder if the attempt to do isn't just it's like we, in a sense, we are faced with our own powerlessness when face to face with life. What we're faced with is our own, in a sense, our own nothingness in the face of life, because life itself is all there is, and there's no one here separate from life. The me, the ego, doesn't like that. It wants control. It wants power. It wants to be an individual. I want to be someone. I don't want to be no one, because in the face of life, in the face of the raw power of life, I am no one. So very quickly, I need to do something to get control back. I need to do something to fix life, and then great. And then we get an identity. I am the doer. Great. Now I know who I am. I am doing something to get somewhere, and there's a kind of security and there's a sense of safety in that somehow, because you're no longer faced with life as it is. Now you're just dealing with a problem that needs to be fixed. It makes somehow it's safer. It feels safer. It feels like you have control again. Like you are someone who is doing something to fix a problem. You're in control. You have an identity. And again, there's nothing wrong with this. We're just looking at this. This appears to be this appears to be the mechanism. So
So how do you do your daily activities and at the same time not being caught in being you?
They're not separate. Being and doing are not separate. Again, this is another one of these assumptions, another one of these deeply held assumptions that either I'm being or I'm doing. Either I'm being or I'm doing. What I'm suggesting is there's actually nobody here separate from life who can be or do. That's another division. That's another division that we project onto life. I be or I do. Actually, in again, just look at present experience. In present experience, right here and right now, can you really find a division between being and doing, or is that just another set of concepts that we project onto life?
Yeah, well, it seems easier when I'm sitting and I'm not moving about and doing physical things or thinking too hard or whatever, then it's easier. But once the more activity is going on, it seems more difficult to be loose or be, not being caught in the mix.
Well, this is about the discovery of the being, you could say, in the doing. It's right there in the midst of, you say when you have a busy mind. I was talking to someone a few months ago, and they were telling me that they that they find it difficult to get to sleep at night because they lie in bed and their mind is very busy. They have a lot of thoughts whirling around, and they desperately try. They lie in bed at night and they're trying to make the mind quiet, because they think that they need to quiet the mind before they can get to sleep. But of course, what ends up happening is that they end up fighting the mind. They end up applying all their techniques and practices to try and, basically it's to try and shut the mind down, to try and quiet it down. But of course, it just ends up fueling it actually. But what I said to them was, when we say we have a busy mind, it's almost like we're saying that thoughts have somehow invaded us. That thoughts are somehow separate from us, and they've kind of invaded. They've come in. Like we wouldn't want them to be. We don't want them to be there. But there is it's this kind of alien force somehow that comes in and buzzes around, and then we try and get rid of the thoughts as if they were separate from us. It's almost as if the thoughts become the enemy. It's like we think that there's awareness. There's pure awareness, and then thoughts come in, and they somehow cloud pure awareness, or they block pure awareness. This is what we think. This is what I used to believe as a spiritual seeker. I used to believe that it was good to have pure awareness, or pure being, or whatever you want to call it. It was good to have pure awareness. I needed to get rid of thoughts. Thoughts were like a block to pure awareness, or thoughts were getting in the way of pure awareness. But what I discovered, actually, again, thoughts aren't separate from awareness. You see, thoughts aren't separate from you. They don't come in from the outside. Thoughts, you could say, thoughts just appear in awareness, and then ultimately, when you really look, you discover that you can't find any separation. You can never discover any separation between thoughts and awareness. So you can say actually that thoughts are made of awareness. Thoughts are made of awareness. The substance of thoughts is awareness. So then you see, when that's discovered, you see what you realize is that thoughts can't block anything. They can't block. Thoughts don't block awareness. Thoughts are made of awareness. So then it doesn't matter how many thoughts appear. It doesn't matter if there's no thoughts, or there's a few thoughts, or there's a huge number of thoughts swirling around, because it's all equally awareness. It's awareness is not threatened by thoughts. Awareness isn't threatened by the number of thoughts that arise. So even when thoughts appear to be swirling around, there appear to be lots of a busy mind that you might call it. Even when there is what appears to be a busy mind, actually, it's just an appearance of awareness. It's awareness playing as thought. So then there's no need to get rid of the thoughts. You see, there's no need to get rid of the busy mind. Then the thoughts can just be there, because the thoughts. It's like, you know, it's like a sky, a clear blue sky. The sky doesn't matter if there's no clouds or there's a few clouds or there's lots of clouds. The sky remains the sky, you see. So awareness remains awareness, whether there's no thoughts or one thought or 1,000 thoughts, you see. So again, it's the recognition that it's not your mind. It's not really your mind. It's just thoughts appearing. It's just thoughts appearing, and you'll never be able to find the division line between thoughts and awareness. Thoughts are made of awareness. Their substance is awareness, and then once you see that everything is awareness. So then you can't even call it awareness, because there's nothing outside of awareness. So it's almost like this is a temporary language that we have to use, that we talk about awareness and contents of awareness. We talk about formless and form. But in a way, that's not even true. That's not true. It's like a temporary language that you have to use. Because really the reality is, it can't be contained by those opposites. You know, it's beyond form and formless, and awareness and contents of awareness. So in that recognition that it's all oneness, that's another word. It's all oneness. Then the need to manipulate thoughts dies away. So that the freedom. So we come back to the freedom in, as opposed to the freedom from. So I'm not talking about freedom from a busy mind, which is what everyone's looking for. I'm not talking about freedom from a busy mind. I'm talking about freedom in what you call a busy mind. Because of course you only call it a busy mind because you're seeking a quiet mind. That's why you call it a busy mind. The moment you call it a busy mind, you're already in a way seeking a quiet mind. So the seeking has already started. So this is freedom in, freedom as what you call a busy mind. Because really a busy mind is just thoughts appearing in the moment. It's just thoughts appearing in the moment. And again, when those thoughts aren't owned, when there's no attempt to stop those thoughts or to quiet down those thoughts, when there's no seeking for a quiet mind, then you can't even call it a busy mind, you see. Then it's just thoughts appearing. It's just clouds in the sky. And sometimes there's a few clouds, sometimes there's no clouds, sometimes there's lots of clouds. But the sky isn't affected, you know. And you could, another word for that is love. Is unconditional love. And that's unconditional love. It's like built in to the very fabric of your experience. It is what you are, you know. And that wholeness it's already it's already there. And it's what I was going to say is the true authentic freedom, it doesn't look anything like your concepts of what freedom looks like, because we have so many concepts of what freedom looks like. So true freedom is the freedom to be what you are in the moment. True freedom is the freedom to just be this. The true freedom is the freedom for whatever's happening to just be happening. So the true freedom is the freedom. It's going to sound strange when I say it, but the true freedom is the freedom to have a busy mind.
And a busy body as well. It seems amusing to observe my body and my mind operating and going about their way as if I observe another person doing that.
Well,
this is what you're talking about.
Yeah, yeah, because ultimately nothing is yours. Even the thing that we think is most personal to us in the world is our body. In the appearance, it totally defines us in a way. But to discover that even your body isn't yours, your thoughts certainly aren't yours. Because are you doing the thinking? Are you choosing to think, or are thoughts just happening? Of course, you discover that thoughts just happen. There's no one there doing thinking. Thoughts just appear in the same way as the body. You're not doing the body. You're not making the body happen. You're not doing the body. You're not doing the heart beating. You're not doing sensations. Sensations just appear. Breathing just happens. The heart just beats in the same way that thoughts just appear. So then you've discovered actually there's no separation between mind and body. You'll never find the division line between mind and body. All you'll ever discover is just life happening. So whether life appears as a thought or as a sensation or a breathing happening or a sound, it's all part of the same manifestation. So even your body isn't yours. As Jesus said, you have to lose your life to save it. You have to lose your life to save it. The losing your life is the discovery that nothing is yours. But that losing is also the saving, because that's the discovery of wholeness. Seeing that nothing is yours, seeing that life simply happens by itself, is the discovery of wholeness, which is also the end of the seeker, because it's the end of the one who is separate from life. And that's an intimacy that can't be spoken about. It can't be put into words.
It's total freedom without any baggage.
Yeah. But it's so free though that baggage is allowed to arise.
Yeah.
It doesn't even reject.
And you don't experience it as baggage.
Thank you so much.
Fantastic.
That was great. Thank you.
Thanks,
Thank
Alexander.
you. Lots of love.
Sure, you too.
Thank you much. Wow. Okay, you get wound up. We could really talk, huh? So, thanks, Jeff.
That was a good another marathon session, Richard.
Right on, Jeff.
Good.
Thanks.
No, thank you, and thank you
Loved
to everyone who called in, and to everyone who was watched and listened, and my website is lifewithoutascenter.com. Have to get that plug in there.
So everybody, thanks for coming. Thanks for Sunday the 9th, and we'll be seeing you in the near future. This will be up pretty soon, probably. I'll just go right to this one. And we'll just see what happens this summer. It sounds like I think it's going to be great. Why not? Bye, Jeff.
Bye, everybody. Bye-bye.